Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are in the world. This is Tracy Murda on behalf of Richard Jacobs at Future Tech Podcast. Today I have an exciting guest. With me I have Gavin Smith, the CEO of First Global Credit. Of course, First Global Credit is the world's first finance company that brings the profit opportunities existing in mainstream markets within the reach of digital currency holders. Gavin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Tracy. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, let's just jump in, Gavin. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started with First Global Credit?
Sure. Well, my background originally was in finance, and I spent about 25 years prior to First Global Credit involved in financial markets, both as a trader and middle office, so covered the broad spectrum of finance. I wasn't involved in cryptocurrency directly until I met some friends of mine that had been more on the technical side, and they'd got involved quite early on, and they told me about this, about Bitcoin, something which I'd heard about but didn't really know much of the detail. And anyway, we got talking, and they had been mining for a while and had built up a pool of Bitcoin, and they were looking for a way to really make a return on that, because the only way at that time, we're talking now 2014, so it was post-Mt. Gox, before there was much variety in the ecosystem. So the only thing you could really do was trade those Bitcoins. So we threw around some ideas about how they could use the value in those Bitcoins to make a return if they weren't active traders. And what we came up with was really, I've always been active in trading, so we came up with a very informal arrangement where I put on stock trades for them that they wanted to do. They told me what they wanted to do, secured by Bitcoins, and I would essentially finance the position. And we did it almost, I don't want to say for fun, but it was very informal, the process. And it worked quite well. They liked it. And from that, we really grew the idea and looked at how we could really package that into a company with a much broader range of products that we could offer to our customers. That was really the foundation of the company and how we got started. So obviously, as time has gone on, that's the idea around that has grown. But yeah, that was the starting point in stocks and how we could get in people invested in stocks.
So tell us a little bit about First Global Credit, just in terms of the platform and how it works.
Sure. The whole principle behind the platform is we're a cryptocurrency-based company. So we provide facility for people who hold cryptocurrency, as we said, to make investments. So we're not looking to compete directly with the traditional brokers, but the value proposition we offer to our customers is that most of our customers are people that believe in the long-term potential of the cryptocurrency, so they want to keep the economic value. So the platform allows them to place their Bitcoin on the platform as collateral. The key element here is they don't need to sell those Bitcoins to get involved in trading stocks. They're there purely as security. Once they've deposited those, we do need to go through a KYC process, because obviously one part of what we do is in the regulated markets. So the customers need to perform a full KYC check. Once they've done that, on an online platform, they can very easily place trades to buy and sell shares. Currently, most of the shares that we offer in the US, but we're broadening that to include global markets. So we're including Hong Kong in a few weeks, and the whole idea is to really extend the range of possibilities open to people. But the platform itself and the way to use it, we've tried to keep very, very simple. So literally, you deposit your Bitcoins, they're held in secure storage, and We then finance stock positions. You place that through an online interface, buy and sell the stocks you're interested in, any dividends you receive, and any profit you make when you sell those shares, we then sweep back into Bitcoins, and those Bitcoins are credited to your account. So the whole principle behind it is you're earning, we give the facility to earn a return on those Bitcoins, but you don't need to sell the Bitcoins to take advantage of the service.
So Gavin, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk just about some of the basics of Bitcoin itself for those of us who are maybe, just entering into this really evolving world. Where does it stand right now in terms of Bitcoin becoming a full-fledged currency?
That's actually a very big question. Different people have a different view. Our view within the company is very much it is a true currency. Excuse me. It's certainly a store of value. Now, when we use the term currency, we're not using the term legal tender, which obviously has its own characteristics, and that's where some people do get it murkies the water. So it's a currency, not legal tender. But I would classify it as a very volatile emerging currency. I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend this is a stable currency which with low volatility. It's not. It still has volatility, and we've seen that in recent months. We moved up from $700 up to a high of $1,100 in something like 6 weeks, and then back down to $800 within another week, and now we're at $900. So you can see from that it's still quite a lot of volatility in that marketplace. But the key thing from our perspective is that Bitcoin and other public blockchain cryptocurrencies, they offer real benefits, I want to put it that way, that other currencies don't offer. For instance, and certainly I'm talking about Bitcoin specifically now, it's not controlled by any single entity or single government. Now there's two plus and minus to that. Obviously the negative is it's not backed by any government. But the positive side of that is you don't get the inflationary bias that you tend to get with traditional currencies. So in the long-term behavior of the currency is more akin to something like gold, where there's a store of value in there. It's not possible for people to simply print more Bitcoins. They can mine more Bitcoins within the structure that's been created up to a total of 21 million, which is the most Bitcoins that will ever be issued. But it's not possible for any entity to simply say, okay, we're now going to double the number of Bitcoins in issue and flood the market. So that provides real benefits that you don't see with a traditional fiat currency.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So are there some compliance issues that are still surrounding the Bitcoin industry?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were actually one of the first companies to need to face that because, as I said, we've got one foot in the traditional financial marketplace. So we, from day one, followed full KYC, full AML requirements. The actual regulation is now starting to catch up with that, if that makes sense, of Bitcoin exchanges in general. So most of the industry participants now will do KYC. Most jurisdictions are keeping a fairly light touch view of Bitcoin at the moment. I think they want to see how the market develops. They want to see the market, how the benefit case unfolds. And there are some real benefit cases that I'll come on to later, which excites us as a company, where there are benefits intrinsic to the blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain, that you can't get with other currencies in terms of counterparty risk and how that's managed. So I think a lot of regulators are taking at the moment quite a light touch view of the of regulation and allowing the companies to evolve and just using existing financial regulations where they're appropriate. So as I said, KYC, AML, also segregation of customer funds, and the usual things you would expect to see with a more traditional marketplace.
are there some things that First Global Credit is doing to reduce risks and, especially the counterparty risk things?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things which we're working on at the moment is not currently released, so I can't go into too much detail on the technology, but I can give detail of the concepts, and we'll actually be in a position to release this in about 6 weeks. One of the things that has frustrated me, I guess, about the Bitcoin industry, and our company's exactly the same in this, that we have all adopted the traditional broker paradigm, which is our customers deposit money with us. We then hold that cryptocurrency, and we allow them to trade on our platform. Now, obviously, that's great for the broker, and it's great for the banks who also have the same model because they get to use that money. But cryptocurrency actually allows you to go down a different path. It allows a paradigm where the customer still keeps control of their assets, where obviously there have been a number of instances of Bitcoin companies and traditional companies losing customer funds. And the ones that spring to mind, obviously Mt. Gox is one everyone's heard of. We had Bitfinex in the cryptocurrency field about 3 months ago, where they were hacked and customer funds were lost. On the traditional finance side, you get a similar thing with MS Global, who lost large amounts of money pre the financial crisis, and then obviously Lehman's during the financial crisis. So this is not something that's unique to cryptocurrency, but it is something that's in the forefront in the cryptocurrency field. And by using the technology within the blockchain and multi-sig technology and smart contracts, it's actually possible for exchanges to move beyond the existing financial paradigm and to give people control of their assets. So even if the exchange is compromised, as Bitfinex was, the customer funds are still secure because it requires the customer's, let's say, agreement to release those funds. So they would explicitly need to sign the transaction. And that's something which we are working quite heavily towards, because we believe that that's something that is necessary for the cryptocurrency market to evolve, but also it's a really exciting development that allows us not just to catch up with the existing financial marketplace, but actually leapfrog them and offer a better level of protection for customers than traditional banks can offer, because you're no longer dependent on a government-backed insurance policy or regulation. It's actually secured in the technology itself, so that the funds cannot be released without the customer explicitly signing that transaction. So that's something which we're working towards, and the first product we're able to offer in that field we'll be offering in about 6 weeks' time. So that's something that's quite exciting from my perspective.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to hear. So let's talk about some of the more positive things. So when it comes to the benefits of what First Global, Credit is doing with, for stock trading markets, what is the benefit of Bitcoin for anyone?
I think in many ways we started off with the premise that we wanted to give people who held cryptocurrency the same range of options that people hold traditional currency. So we use stocks as our first product because it's something that people are familiar with. But the longer-term goal is to allow people to invest in stocks, invest in bonds, make loans, invest in property if they want to invest in funds, all using the public blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, as the rails for execution. And what has become clear while we've been offering this product is that yes, there are benefits for people who want to hold cryptocurrency, but what we found is it's also a really convenient, effective way for people who don't have immediate, easy access to traditional financial markets to actually gain that access. So we've got a lot of customers which we built up in the developing world, in Latin America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia. But for them, access to to the global stock markets is really expensive. It tends to be confined to the more wealthy in those regions, and it's quite a high entry level for them to get access to those markets. By using Bitcoin rails effectively as an entry point for them to get onto the investment into the investment arena, it allows them to participate in global markets in a way that they haven't been able to before. So that's really something else that was quite a surprise to me. It was an unexpected benefit that we found when we started offering the service, that it was a way for people who didn't otherwise have access to those markets to gain that access. And speaking to various people around the world, that's where actually we see a large part of our future growth coming from, because people love the idea. It's something new and something available for them.
Gavin, what industries do you think are going to be benefiting the most from the technology and the advancements of Bitcoin?
From our perspective, obviously our focus is very much finance. That's where my background is. That's where we are focused on. However, the actual blockchain technology can be used for any activity, any activity where two participants want to transact business but don't necessarily have full trust in the other person paying or delivering. So, I mean, I can't mention the company, but it's a company I've previously worked with in the commodity field. We're looking at ways that we can use the Bitcoin blockchain as in physical commodity trading. There's a large amount of trust between the counterparties, and some of these parties are small mining companies. They're not the big conglomerates. So there's a high level of risk doing business with them. Using the blockchain, what you can do is actually put in place a way to secure the financial risk on a contract without it being too onerous on both parties, because unlike a traditional finance deal through a bank, you don't need to finance the full value of the commodity. You just need to finance the margin, in effect, just like you would on a futures contract. So it allows industries that otherwise rely on bank lines of credit to secure financing for large value items to do business with one another without needing that finance in place in advance, because the risk is covered by blockchain. That's one example. You can also another area I've seen it used, which is fascinating. I mean, this is not my idea by any means. It was a conference I was at, and one of the big German power companies, RWE, are using Bitcoin, using cryptocurrency as rails for people who generate their own electricity to sell it in their local community, and they use cryptocurrency to do micropayments between the seller and the buyer of that locally generated electricity, and it's all done automatically. And that gives you an idea of the range of industries that could benefit from this. You know, it's everything from large ticket items, as I said, on the commodity field, right the way through to micropayments for small local communities to transact business. So it really does, it provides a way for geographically remote people to do business without needing to trust one another and not needing a bank in between. Sorry, I've got an ambulance.
No problem. That is absolutely incredible. So really, I mean, do you see that, you know, maybe sometime down the line, this is something that just about anybody will be able to maybe use?
Absolutely, and that actually, I believe, is the key to making Bitcoin successful, because one of the things that has held it back from general acceptance, which I fully understand, is it's quite daunting for a newcomer to look at it and understand how they can buy Bitcoin, how they can store those Bitcoins, how they transact business. Because the first thing in most documentation you'll read, they start talking about private keys, public keys, protection of keys, hashing algorithms, And for most people, they can read this and think, yeah, this is too technical for me. And the key to moving Bitcoin forward is really to make a layer underneath the surface that people don't need to care about. You know, people are using it. It's part of what they do, but they're not even aware that they're using it. I mean, there's a company which we've been looking at that they're doing exactly this for remittances to Africa, and what they do is the deposit is made in one country, it's withdrawn in cash in another country, and there's a Bitcoin layer between the two, but the two participants aren't really aware of it. It's just the technology they use to transfer the funds from point A to point B. So that's where I think the real growth for Bitcoin is going to come, from applications and services that people aren't really aware that they're using it, and that then will allow the acceptance to develop until people become comfortable with the technology and comfortable with the terminology, and will start to use it explicitly as a currency in its own right.
I suppose it could be even similar to something as simple as the iPhone or any of those applications. 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have even dreamed of the things we can do now. I get the sense you almost have to throw out what your idea of currency and those types of things, the traditional things is, and kind of wrap your head around what this new
Absolutely.
Bitcoin could be.
It's exactly that. It's almost a way of allowing people to barter without needing to be face-to-face, because there's a store of value that you can transfer very, very easily and very securely between party A and party B. So it's a medium of exchange, simple as that. It's what currency traditionally was, a store of value before it became what it is in the modern world with central banks and banks able to do fractional reserve banking and things like that. So it keeps people in control of their assets, which is what I find so attractive.
This might be just a silly question, but I'm just curious. What do you think, let's say Bitcoin, takes off and it really is the success that we all hope it will be. What effect is that going to have on our traditional banking systems?
I think, well, firstly, I'm not. I think it'll be a long time before
right.
Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency replace traditional currency. I think for certainly, in my foreseeable future, it's an additional medium of exchange. But for banks that want to enter the cryptocurrency field, I'm talking about specifically public blockchain cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, because a number of central banks are looking at issuing their own central bank coins, which, like traditional currency, they would be able to effectively mint more of. So that's a bit different, and that falls down to the way the banking system works. Because with traditional currency, obviously a bank, if it has a liquidity shortfall, can borrow from the central bank, and that allows them to lend out most of what they have on deposit. They lend out. That's how they make their money. And if there's a liquidity shortfall, they can borrow from the central bank. Obviously, with Bitcoin, that isn't possible. There is no central bank able to just distribute more and more funds.
Right.
So banks who adopt cryptocurrency for that part of their business would need to go back to a more traditional banking model, where they're genuinely custodians of people's assets, where their job is actually to keep those assets safe and secure and give the customer easy access to those funds. At the moment, you're seeing some companies, non-banking entities, offering that type of service. I mean, one is Zappo, where they just make it very easy for people to use Bitcoin. And I see banks moving into that area, but they're going to have to change their model. The way I see banking moving to is very much, as I said, a genuine custodian and also a liquidity provider, so that because they're still going to be the largest holders of assets, so they will be adding liquidity to the market, but they won't be able to take the same leveraged I don't want to use the word bets because there's more to it than that, but leverage positions in marketplaces, which we know has caused problems various times over the last 20 years, but obviously 2008 being the most recent one.
If you don't mind, I'd like to switch gears just a little bit here and talk about what happened in China last week. You know, what is it that actually occurred, and how might that affect things, or is it going to affect things on a global level for everyone else?
Sure. One of the reasons, well, historically, one of the reasons that Chinese people, have been very attracted to Bitcoin is they were able to trade Bitcoin without being KYC'd, but without being identity checked. It's one of the few places in China where you could do that and not have to give full details to a company. Now, obviously, that changed last weekend, and I'll come to that in a bit more detail. But historically, I mean, Bitcoin's been around for such a short period of time, but historically in the life of Bitcoin, China has been one of the major holders and the major miners of Bitcoin, and that's one of the reasons, because it's a very free form of capital which is not under government control. Now, last week, as you say, the PBOC basically sent out an open letter to all of the Bitcoin exchanges, giving notice that they were now being watched. And essentially, they've been told you have to KYC and AML all your customers. One of the things that has always been attractive to Chinese individuals about Bitcoin is how easy it is for them to move assets overseas. Some of the exchanges were promoting that as a way for Chinese people to move their assets out of China. They've been explicitly told not to use that as a marketing message. And the other thing which they have started to clamp down on is the interest rates that the Chinese exchanges can offer to Chinese citizens. Now, while I understand why they're doing it, because the yuan's under a lot of pressure and they're trying to disincentivize, I guess is the word, people from switching out of their domestic currency into Bitcoin, I think it's a very difficult thing for them to impose, because even if the Chinese exchanges follow all of those rules to the letter, it's very, very easy for a Chinese individual to exchange the Bitcoin. Once it's in Bitcoin, they can very easily send it to an exchange outside of China. So it's one of those things that I think China is struggling with, the government, a currency that is very easy for people to move into and allows them to free access to global markets anywhere. So I think that there will be more announcements coming out of China over the next few weeks as that story unfolds. In terms of the price action, while the Chinese government action was given as a reason for the fall from 1100, I actually think the market was overdue for a correction anyway. It had gone up from low 700s to 1100 very, very quickly, so it wasn't surprising to see the market take a breather and come back a bit. So while that may have been the catalyst that triggered it, I don't think it was the cause, and I don't think it will have a long-term effect on the price of Bitcoin moving forward.
So tell me about what is in store, what you can talk about anyway, when it comes to First Global Credit's plans for the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, obviously there's the expansion into other markets, but specifically around counterparty risk, we see our long-term growth, and now I'm talking over a period of 2 to 3 years rather than 2 to 3 months. The technology we're developing around eliminating counterparty risk for holders of cryptocurrency to trade assets, we're looking at ways we can actually take that and apply it to general markets. So the long-term vision I have, if you imagine a marketplace where not trading cryptocurrencies, trading stocks, trading currencies, trading any asset type where you can have individuals able to trade with one another. There's no counterparty risk because the transaction takes place across both elements at the same time with the same contract, technology contract. The transaction happens. Excuse me. And the way I see the market developing, rather than the traditional hub and spoke model we have now, where brokers and banks have customers, the customers trade with the broker and banks, the brokers and banks trade with one another, or through an exchange, everyone taking a fee on that transaction. Instead, you've got a network of individuals trading with one another and trading with banks. Banks, as I said, will still be the biggest players in town, so they'll be liquidity providers, but they won't have a monopoly on executing those transactions. And the reason is that underlying technology will manage that counterparty risk. And that for me is where the growth of our company comes from in the next 2 to 3 years. The ability to take that model and move it into the traditional financial sphere, actually allow people that don't care about Bitcoin, don't want to trade Bitcoin, but to transact business in a way that is risk-free and cheaper. And that's where I see the benefit of Bitcoin and the growth of our company coming from.
Love it. Gavin, you'll probably get a kick out of this. It's like we've become a real talk show here, radio show. I've got Rich texting me, asking me questions that he wants to know answers to. So I'm just gonna read from my phone right here. So Rich is asking about the Winklevoss twins and their Bitcoin ETF. If there's any info or input that you can add to that.
ETFs, I think, are a great way to get the technology and the currency in front of the general public. I don't know the SEC process well enough to be able to comment on the likelihood of success. To me, it seems to have gone on a very long time, but I hope the SEC, from what I've read, the SEC are concerned because it's a technology they don't understand the risks. While they're absolutely right to make sure that everything is in place and everything is secure, it would be really good to see a Bitcoin ETF launched on the marketplace. Some people, as I said, looking at Bitcoin, some people look at it and think this is too technical for me, but I would like to get involved. The more people can get involved through a regulated and secure vehicle or entity, I think it's positive for the industry. So I hope that their ETF or one of the sorry, I forget the company, but there's another one that's also trying to be launched. It would be good to see one or both actually get approval from the SEC.
And his other question was if there are any other cryptocurrencies that you think will trade like Dash or Litecoin.
We accept the major ones, so we'll accept Ether Classic, Bitcoin. We'll also accept Litecoin. We believe that Bitcoin will be the gold standard. Ether has got a slightly different use case in the sense that it's geared towards smart contracts, so its value as a token, while necessary, is almost secondary, whereas Bitcoin is much more about the currency as well as what you can do with it. So, but I think certainly in the near future, you're going to see these different cryptocurrencies, each with their own benefit case, evolving as markets. I think personally, it will narrow down to probably 3 or 4 maximum long term, each with a distinct flavour. I mean, for instance, Ether and Ether Classic, I don't see both of those surviving because they're very similar, and the difference in use case at the moment is very much around governance. A lot of purists in the cryptocurrency space, and I'll admit I'm one of them, didn't like the rolling back of the chain. They felt that was breaking the cryptocurrency model, which is a view I agree with. But I think if they can overcome that governance issue, and the big test for them is when they switch to proof of stake, whether that works or not, because that's a big untried. So from our perspective, we monitor it. We allow customers to use it as collateral. None of our infrastructure, our crypto infrastructure, is Ether based at the moment because to our mind it's still too early. But yes, I do believe there's space for more than one cryptocurrency. I don't think it will just be Bitcoin and nothing else.
Excellent. Well, this has been a true pleasure for me. You've just absolutely amazing, blown my mind, and really, been able to break it down for the layman like myself who are, just sort of dipping our toe into the Bitcoin industry. Is there any final thoughts that you'd like to offer our listeners before we say adieu?
Well, I think the main thing I would say is I'd encourage people to read up about it, find out about it. It's for me it was a real eye opener when I was introduced to Bitcoin, and I know more people are familiar with it now. But all I would say is don't read all the don't believe all the horror stories that it's only used for nefarious purposes. There is a genuine ecosystem building up of legitimate Bitcoin users now, and yeah, I'd encourage everyone to go out and read up about it. There's some good reference sources on the internet. Go up, read about it, and learn about it, and yeah, buy some because hey, it's got the potential to be a very, very good market in the future.
Absolutely. Gavin Smith, CEO of First Global Credit. Gavin, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing what both you and First Global Credit are bringing to the Bitcoin table. Have a good one, Gavin.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Currency in front of the general public. I don't know the SEC process well enough to be able to comment on the likelihood of success. To me, it seems to have gone on a very long time, but I hope the SEC, from what I've read, the SEC are concerned because it's a technology they don't understand the risks. While they're absolutely right to make sure that everything is in place and everything is secure, it would be really good to see a Bitcoin ETF launched on the marketplace. Some people, as I said, looking at Bitcoin, some people look at it and think this is too technical for me, but I would like to get involved. The more people can get involved through a regulated and secure vehicle or entity, I think it's positive for the industry. So I hope that their ETF or one of the sorry, I forget the company, but there's another one that's also trying to be launched. It would be good to see one or both actually get approval from the SEC.
And his other question was if there are any other cryptocurrencies that you think will trade like Dash or Litecoin. We accept the major ones, so we'll accept Ether Classic, Bitcoin. We'll also accept Litecoin. We believe that Bitcoin will be the gold standard. Ether has got a slightly different use case in the sense that it's geared towards smart contracts, so its value as a token, while necessary, is almost secondary, whereas Bitcoin is much more about the currency as well as what you can do with it. So, but I think certainly in the near future, you're going to see these different cryptocurrencies, each with their own benefit case, evolving as markets. I think personally, it will narrow down to probably 3 or 4
maximum long term, each with a distinct flavour. I mean, for instance, Ether and Ether Classic. I don't see both of those surviving because they're very similar, and the difference in use case at the moment is very much around governance. A lot of purists in the cryptocurrency space, and I'll admit I'm one of them, didn't like the rolling back of the chain. They felt that was breaking the cryptocurrency model, which is a view I agree with. But I think if they can overcome that governance issue, and the big test for them is when they switch to proof of stake, whether that works or not, because that's a big untried. So from our perspective, we monitor it. We allow customers to use it as collateral. None of our infrastructure, our crypto infrastructure, is Ether based at the moment because to our mind it's still too early. But yes, I do believe there's space for more than one cryptocurrency. I don't think it'll just be Bitcoin and nothing else.
Excellent. Well, this has been a true pleasure for me. You've just absolutely amazing, blown my mind, and really, been able to break it down for the layman like myself who are, just sort of dipping our toe into the Bitcoin industry. Is there any final thoughts that you'd like to offer our listeners before we say adieu?
Well, I think the main thing I would say is I'd encourage people to read up about it, find out about it. It's for me it was a real eye opener when I was introduced to Bitcoin, and I know more people are familiar with it now. But all I would say is don't read all the don't believe all the horror stories that it's only used for nefarious purposes. There is a genuine ecosystem building up of legitimate Bitcoin users now, and yeah, I'd encourage everyone to go out and read up about it. There's some good reference sources on the internet. Go up, read about it, and learn about it, and yeah, buy some because hey, it's got the potential to be a very, very good market in the future.
Absolutely. Gavin Smith, CEO of First Global Credit. Gavin, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing what both you and First Global Credit are bringing to the Bitcoin table. Have a good one, Gavin.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Absolutely. Gavin Smith, CEO of First Global Credit. Gavin, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing what both you and First Global Credit are bringing to the Bitcoin table. Have a good one, Gavin.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. Artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.